Yeah. And ask yourself, when these layers accumulate over top, why is that happening? Yeah, why is that happening? Take the memory of that experience of cooking, which you probably have had many, many times, which you're describing as a, take that memory and go into it fully. See if you can perceive what's happening. You're describing anxiety, you're describing contraction. What is that? Why is that happening? And avoid one thing, which is to say there's something unconscious. For example, saying, well, there's something subconscious that activates and I don't know what it is, and then I contract. Assume it's completely visible to you, and assume you're 100% responsible for it. And from that perspective, go to what you just described and see if you can understand what's happening. And it's related, I'm using this related to what you brought up, which is the meaning of life. I mean, I brought it up in the meditation, but because I think it's related to that. No, that's not it. I'm really going to try to not tell you. And obviously what I tell you would be my perspective, my understanding, but I think it would be really valuable if you can see it. If you can see what is happening, that you go from the meaning of life is the breath, and then you start cooking, and then you're anxious, you're contracted, you feel in your body, what's happening? Basically, when you said, because you said in the meditation, you really felt it's that simple, and then it gets covered, right? And I asked you, what is this covering? And you described this experience of cooking. And so, okay, let's go. Become a scientist of this situation you experience repeatedly and try to understand what is it exactly that's happening. You're doing something, you're cooking, and then something's happening, which you describe as like it's covering up. It's the example you gave to this covering up of this meaning of life is so simple and it's just the breath. It's really simple. I mean, what I'm fishing for is very simple. I understand. I'm kind of giggling because it's exactly what I was suggesting. Try not to do. You're describing a habit, a conditioning, and it's something you can't do well, and so it's kind of starts to become something that's out of your hands. It's happened in the past, and now it's a habit. It's actually the other way around. It's something you're doing that then conditions you. So, and what you describe is like there's something really special about you that you can't be either calm or be productive. So these are kind of at odds. And I say it this way because that's a pretty common thing. And so you're developing an interpretation around it it's something unusual, that's special about you, that's happened to you. You don't know why or how. It's a conditioning that over time, and it's exactly what I'm suggesting. Assume, just for this experiment, assume it's not related to the past, it's not a conditioning, it's something you are doing that you're responsible, and you're doing it at the moment it's happening. And you can undo it just like that. The metaphor I often use is my hand's like this. I do this for 20 minutes, and I can say, well, my hand is cramped. There was something that happened, which is the creating a fist for a long time. And it starts to feel like, well, this sucks. This is happening to me. And then you realize, well, actually, I'm the one who's cramping. There's this sense you're cooking, you're getting anxious, your body's tightening. You think somebody is doing that, and you're a victim of this tightening. Somebody else, there's a puppet. There's a puppeteer, you're the puppet. There's a puppeteer that's getting you all anxious and cramped up. Well, I'm saying you're the puppeteer. Yeah, that's why I said you're responsible, but you're responsible. Let's start the experiment assuming it's happening right now, you're doing it, you're responsible. What is it? Because then again, you were like, well, it's something I do, is that I have a thing around responsibility that I don't, an abdication of responsibility, and then you get into an analysis of this condition you have. That's why you can't be responsible, because there's It's simpler than that. Those are that you're rationalizing the condition that you have, therefore you're a victim of this thing that I'm saying. You're just doing that. What is it that you're doing? What's this? I'll answer, and I'll be going fast because I only have a few more minutes. But yes, it matters. That's why I'm focusing on it. And two, you can't just do this, but first you need to see what this thing is. This is a metaphor. And so I'm asking you because I want you to realize what this thing is. What's the cause of this cramping, of this closing? And so there's something that you're doing when you, for example, let's go to the memory of cooking. There's something that's happening there that you are doing. And so stay close to the experience and the memory of it. You could start completely fine. You start cooking, and then the cramping starts happening. What's happening in this activation of doing something that the cramping begins, the contracting begins? What starts to happen? And it's related to what you brought up, because you brought this up, the question of the meaning of life. You said, I saw it's really simple. It's just breathing. And then it gets covered up with all of this stuff. And the example is when you cook. For example, that's when it happens. Why? What's happening? What is... It has to do with the meaning of life. The meaning of life is the breath. And then what happens? It's simpler. It's simpler. I will probably have to say it, and this might just be my words, but because also the meaning of life is the breath is just kind of a pointer and a metaphor we're using, or I started and we're talking about it, but it basically refers to what is valuable, what I'm looking for, what has meaning, and what it's all about is already here, and it's happening right now, and it's present. Right? So that's when one says the meaning of life is the breath, and I realize how true that is and how simple it is. That means the meaning of life is always given because I'm here and there's breath happening. Nothing else is needed for the meaning of life to be fulfilled, right? Is that kind of what we're talking about? And then you say it gets covered up and it's kind of lost. And so the question, which is, it's almost like a trick question because it's that simple. It's like, what's the covering of this? And it actually, all it is, which is what I'm going at, is that very quickly what sets in is a decision in attributing the meaning of life to something else. And so when you and this is really key, and this is key for human beings, when you try to do something and be proactive, immediately the meaning of life becomes the fulfillment of that. So the meaning of life becomes when the food is ready and you can eat it. Something like that. We project the satisfaction in the outcome. This is in Buddhism, the outcome of actions. And so what happens is, in Buddhism they say to release the attachment of the outcome of your actions. But it has to do with this. It's I think it's better said. You quickly jump on a belief that the meaning is, the fulfillment is, the satisfaction is, the meaning of life is in when the food is done and I'm ready to eat it, as an example, then I will be fulfilled. Then this will be satisfied. Another way they point to this is the journey is the reward. I don't know if you know that expression. It's a very common expression. It's that simple. My teacher Otto used to say, "El camino es la meta," which is basically a translation of the journey is the reward. And so it's pointing to that, which is all of what every spiritual teaching points to, is presence. But I was trying to be really specific so that you notice there's a shift in you. I might be wrong, but I don't think so. That there is this really quick setting into now is no longer okay, things will be fulfilled when I finish this action, when I finish this task, when I get the food ready, or when I'm eating it. Or even it could be like when I'm done eating, because I'm eating so then I can do this other thing. And so there's this projection in the image in time, or imagination of time, when this thing that I'm working towards happens, then I will be satisfied. And in a sense, you could say there's an ignoring of the knowing that that meaning and that satisfaction is in the breath, for example. It's now. And so what happens is this knowing that you had in the meditation, oh, it's just the breath, it's that simple. That's a glimpse of truth. But what happens is that we quickly ignore it, or we aren't that affected for the impact and the value of that. So we have to see it and see it more and more deeply. Yeah, you see when you, oh, it's in the breath, you feel like, okay, I found a tiny little golden nugget. Right? It's like, wow, there's a golden nugget here. I didn't know in the breath there's gold or diamonds. Wow, wow, that's amazing. But then you imagine finishing the meal and you imagine this huge diamond. There's this like huge like kilo of gold when I get the house, when I get the job. And so we're comparing this tiny little golden nugget in the breath, in presence, in the moment, with this huge piece of gold we're imagining when we get to, or a smaller one, but it's still bigger. Like finishing the meal is still more gold than the little piece of amazing, beautiful gold in the present now. And what can happen over time is we start to realize that gold we imagine actually doesn't exist. Because we can get the job, we get the house, we get, and that imagination of the gold is actually zero real. And the gold in the present moment is everything. It's all made of gold. But this is what needs to be seen for yourself. There is no gold anywhere other than now, and what is now is all gold. The gold is in the sound, the gold is in the breath, the gold is in sensations, in sight, in thought. But it's not in the imagination of the future where that huge thing of gold exists. And in fact, we first need to imagine that the gold is in here for it to be over there. And the glimpses that we talk about in this work is this realizing which you had, oh, it's so simple, like there's something here in the breath, it's satisfying, it's beautiful, oh, that's lovely. And then that's just a tiny little golden nugget, you forget about it, or it becomes a memory, yeah, there was some gold, something in the breath. But look at that piece of gold over there in my fantasy of when I get the job or the girl or the whatever. Or even the meal finished, because it's not also about this huge goal in the future. We're imagining these things constantly, but it's like right now, like in the next 5 minutes, this thing is going to happen. I'm working towards it. When I get to that, then it's going to be gold. And then we might get to it. You might get the meal finished, you eat it, and then there's like, see, I was right. It's so satisfying. The goal that I knew was in the meal, but it's actually just in, now you're in sensation, you're in breathing, you're in the moment, you're in the present. And then it's like, oh yeah, I was right. My strategy worked. It's like, no. You're just, now you took a break from projecting. It's in presence. And so the more you see that, then while you're cooking, there's gold. While you're eating, there's gold. While you're stressing out, there's gold. While you're, confused, there's gold. While you're hurting, there's gold. And a lot of the stressing out, confusing, hurting actually dissipates, because 99% of it is created by this looking for it somewhere else. And so when Willie brought up the metaphor I used to use of the acquired taste, which is this process of, when we say, for example, you didn't like drinking wine at first, and then you taste good wine, and then wine is like, wow, it took me a while to realize how amazing it is. Same with a bunch of things. Usually, good liquor and that kind of thing is a good metaphor if you like it. But what that means is it takes you a while to realize where the value is. A great wine always had value, and the first time you taste it, it's like this sour. If you're young, your taste buds aren't ready, and then you realize, you discover, oh, there's just so much value in like good wine, or there's so much value in really present, intimate conversation and relationship. There's so much value in like very slow, intimate lovemaking, compared to what in the mind was like, these like sexual adventures and romantic escapades, and and then there's an acquired taste. And what it is realizing where the value truly is. And so what I'm pointing to is that the value ultimately is now. Is always in whatever is happening now. And then we can fall in love with it, because we see, by seeing the value and by seeing how much more valuable it is than anything we imagine, then there's beauty there. And in that beauty, we fell in love. I have 30 seconds, and I really apologize. I wish I had more time always, but I have 30 seconds. It is relevant because you before you chop wood, carry water, and it sucks. It's the right metaphor, because that's what monks were instructed to do, and it's cold, and you have to go out into like the wilderness and chop wood and carry water, and it sucks. And then you chop wood and carry water, and it's beautiful. But it points to that the activity is the same. The experience is the same.